Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm going to be replacing the strut mounts on my Mazda Protege. But the information that you're going to see in this video is universal. You can use it for any car, any make or model that has a strut spring shock combination. And what happened about, I'd say 6 or 7 months ago, I lowered this car and I used KYB struts and strut mounts, and I lowered the car with H&R springs. One of the strut mounts gave up on me, and I don't suspect it was due to an installation error. Looking at it, it looks like maybe the rubber molding that the mount is made from, maybe it had a bubble in it from the factory. I don't know what caused the premature failure, but it failed. And I'm going to be replacing that today, and I'm replacing it with OEM units. Let me show you those. Okay, so these are the OEM strut mounts from Mazda. CB01-34380. This is the mounts for this particular car according to the VIN number. And there is no difference between left and right. They're both the same. So, but these were a little bit more expensive than the KYB units. These came in about $50, $57 each. Not bad. The reason I bought the KYB units was because they were so cheap. But sometimes you get what you pay for. Now, when it comes to KYB shocks, the shocks are pretty good. And this is actually my first time using KYB strut mounts. I usually would use an OEM strut mount and, kind of mix it up a little bit. But I won't say that. I'm not going to say that KYB's other products like the strut mounts and other strut mounting hardware is crappy. It's just probably, I don't know, it happens. It could have been a bubble in the rubber when they molded the mount from the factory, and which causes premature failure. So I'm not going to shit all over KYB. They make some pretty good stuff. In addition to that, I'm going to be installing these camber bolts, and I'm going to do an alignment on the car when I'm done using an alignment machine. Which, by the way, is not necessary. If you want to do an alignment on a car, all over the place. If you want to do an alignment on a car, you don't have to necessarily use an alignment machine. It just sort of simplifies the process. If you pay attention to most racing teams like NASCAR and some F1 teams, you may see them have a little bit of a fender bender or a little bit of accident. You see one engineer guy here run out there with a tape measure and put it up to the car between the wheels and check the distance and everything and check the angles, and if they're off, then the car is no longer drivable. They have to take it back to the pit and do some adjustments, then put it back out there, or they're retired from the race. If it is within specs, they'll send the car back out and continue the drive. Well, if you notice, they're just using a tape measure. You can do the same with an angle finder. You can put it vertical and horizontal against the wheel, and it'll give you the angles. It'll give you the camber, caster. You can do the same on the control arm. You can find the angle of the control arm and do it that way. But for simplicity, which it is simple, but visually it's better if someone can see how it's done on a machine, because this is what most automotive repair shops use. Most repair facilities, they don't use a ruler or an angle finder. They usually just hook it up to a machine that usually does the math for you and does all that stuff. All you have to do is just turn the bolts and lock them down, look at the screen, dial in the right degrees for each angle, and you're done. So when removing a strut, the first thing I like to do when I'm working in this area, I like to start at the bottom. It makes it easier when you're getting the strut out. If you separate these items first, when you get the strut out, all you have to do is just lift it out. So just take your air gun and a socket, a suitable size. Now this is a 17 millimeters, and the corresponding size over here is 17. So you'll need a wrench. Make sure you're in reverse. Couple of wraps, get it loose. Okay, and make sure you keep all your washers and bolts, even though I'm probably not going to use this one anymore. I have to keep them anyway. Okay. And now I'm dropping stuff. All right, so before I go any further, or before you take that loose, you got a brake line hose here. You can remove that from the strut. There's no real order. You can do it at any order you want. It's your car. Do what you want. So basically, I just take that, just kind of pry it off. Okay, and you get the brake line out. Make sure it's free, because once you take the strut out, you don't want anything in your way. And so get the next one out. Now you don't need air tools to do this. You can do this via hand with just a ratchet and a wrench. Impact wrenches make the job a lot faster. They're not 100% necessary though. Just kind of wiggle it until you can get it out. Okay. Once that separates, all you're going to do here is just kind of let this down like this. Separate it just like that. And then you have another bolt here, which I do believe that's a 17 as well. If not, we can get the proper sizing. Yeah, that's a 17. And you're going to loosen up the sway bar link here. Now if these don't come off immediately, don't keep turning them, otherwise you'll damage this joint inside and the boot. So what you're going to do, this one has an Allen shape inside, or hex shape. You just get a wrench, corresponding wrench, which is 17 millimeter, and that looks like a 6 millimeter Allen. You place the 6 millimeter Allen here and the wrench on the outside, and you would just turn it to get it loose. Once you have your, now this is actually a 5 millimeter Allen or a hex bit. Once you have it set up there, all you want to do is kind of do some ratcheting action. You're going to hold the shaft steady and just kind of ratchet it like this, and this will bring the nut right off. And this is used in case, you know, in case you're using an impact wrench and some of these things just won't come off. You'll find that some of them on the back side here of the sway bar link, it actually has like a 15 or a 16 millimeter side, like two flat sides that a 16 or 15 millimeter wrench will fit on, and you slip like a thin wrench back behind there and hold it steady, and you can get it off like that. Some of these don't even have that. They have like an Allen or a hex bit, metric hex bit on it. And you just do this sort of operation here and it comes right off. There you go. Now that you see the strut is free and it's ready for removal. So we now get the car down a little lower so we can access the top, and you're going to take your 14 millimeter, if you're using impact wrenches like this one, 3/8 impact, or if you're just using say like a ratchet 3/8, I'm just going to take that there and place these on top. Remove the nuts. When removing the last one, always place your hand under the bottom to catch the strut, as it will fall out of the car. So here we go. And there's the strut. It's out, ready to be disassembled, so you can replace the strut mount on top. Okay, so once you've got both left and right struts out of the car, you can move over to this device, which is a strut spring compressor. And right away, before I say anything or go any further, I want to kind of make a kind of disclaimer statement. If you do not have any experience working with shocks, springs, and struts, this is extremely dangerous, and you can cause serious injury to yourself or others if you do not know what you're doing, or you don't have any experience with this sort of device or how to work this. If you do this line of work on a day in, day out basis, and you do know what you're doing, then you would know that this type of wall mount spring strut compressor is not the only type on the market, and it is not the sole source of how you should do this. However, it is probably the safest way to do it. There are other spring compressors out there on the market. For example, if you don't have access to a shop and this type of equipment, what you can do, you can use the what they call clamshell type spring strut compressor, and it's actually shaped just like my hands here, and you use an impact wrench to kind of close it together, and it clips onto the springs and clamps them shut, so you can take off the bolts and access these parts on top. So it is not necessary to use a wall mount spring compressor. However, it's probably the safest way. There are others that look like a wall mount, but they have a base on the floor, and you can just kind of roll it around the shop or wherever you're located. But I think this is by far the most safest type of spring strut compressor. So again, if you have no experience, I do not advise you try this. You're on your own if you do so. Make sure you wear your safety equipment like your glasses, and if you are doing something like this, and make sure this thing is seated properly so the spring doesn't jump out of there and hit you in the chest or any of your body parts, causing injury. So once you get it set up in the machine, the device, you can start lowering the arms down. And what you want to do, you want to position these arms in a way that you get uniform pressure on all corners where this thing will be compressing. It is not always easy to do, because some struts are designed with a little bit of an angle in them, especially if you've ever worked on something like a Volvo. Then you know what I'm talking about. The strut is actually, I don't know, it's just, I know why they did that, why they made the strut that way, but it just makes it that much more difficult when you're trying to replace components and whatnot. And the Volvo strut is actually, it's not the strut doesn't go to the center of the spring. It actually sits to the inside or to one side, increasing the difficulty, the level of difficulty to get this to behave right. So we're just trying to set, I'm just trying to set this up here so I get uniform pressure on all sides where the arms are. Okay, so once you do that, you can start lowering it down, and as you can see, it gets a little looser and looser and looser, and it's still going to be a little bit crooked, but as long as everything is stable here, this is normal. When you compress a spring, this is going to come out. So you're going to hold your strut like this and loosen it with an impact. Take out the strut. And what I like to do, I don't like to keep tension on the spring. I always, whenever I do this, whenever I'm changing struts, sometimes you'll find that when you're changing struts, you don't necessarily always have to change the mount. But in the case that you do, I always release the tension off the spring, because the spring is only dangerous when it's under load, when it's under pressure. And if for whatever reason it's sitting crooked here, or anywhere, and it starts to move around, it can jump out of there, and God forbid you're standing in front of it, because it can really make your stomach or your growing area change dramatically, or damage, or kick you in the head, or spring come out and hit you in the head, screw you up for life. So, but this is the part that we're going to be changing, and right now you can't see. Well, actually, yeah, you can see. There you go. That is not supposed to move like that. This is supposed to be a solid piece, and that's the separation. And actually, when you're driving the car, you hear lots of squeaking noises I hear squeaking out of suspension, I hear knocking noises, and when you turn the wheel left or right, you hear this stretching noise. And this is the source of the noise. You can see where the rubber has been touching this area, and it's just all out of whack. So time for a new one. All right, now once you've got everything out of the car and disassembled, you'll wind up with a strut like this. Just in case you are not planning on replacing your struts, and say your strut mount goes bad and your strut is actually good, or you think it's good, one way to test your strut to make sure you don't need a replacement at this time, just remove the strut bump stop and the bellow. This protects the shaft from any dust, and as I was telling you, these were brand new. So but if this happens to you and you just want to test your strut to see if it's any good, you simply take the shaft and you just push it down. If it goes down nice, and it's kind of hard to push it down and it doesn't return, as you can see, this shaft is returning on its own by itself with no extra. It is returning kind of slow, but it does return. If it does not return, then it is time for struts. And as you can see, this is still fairly new. So, and it was very kind of hard to press that piston down in the strut itself. So no worries, these are just a few months old. Nice firm shocks here. So that's the way you test your strut to see if you need a new one. If you press it down and it doesn't come back up, if it's easy to press down and it shows no effort to return back to the original position, then you know it's done. Pay attention when you take these off, particularly for the Protege. This is the bearing that sits on the bottom side of the strut mount, and it sits just like that, and that's assembled right on top like that. Okay. And that bearing, actually, it should slide. This one's not sliding, period. Some of these you can disassemble and put grease in. I'm going to try to do that with this one because it's totally frozen. I don't know why. They're practically brand new. I'm looking here, there's a lot of grease around here, so I'm assuming that upon compression, the car's weight sitting on it squeezed all the grease out of it, and now it's kind of seized up. So I'm going to see if this is serviceable. If it snaps open, then it's serviceable. If not, well, we'll just have to make do. Let's see if we can get it to loosen up. Okay, so this is the strut bearing, and this one's kind of seized up for this particular car. If this happens to you, if you find out that it doesn't rotate freely, here's what you can do. Just take a right angle pick like this, or a suitable pick, and you just kind of go inside like this. Let's see if we can get in there. And try not to poke your fingers too. Oh. There you go. You can open it up, and there's no ball bearings inside. And the reason, just as I suspected, the reason why it's seized up is because all the grease that was in this thing, you can see it on the top here. It just kind of squares out because of compression. So what you can do, just clean this with some carb cleaner or brake parts cleaner. Clean the top and bottom pieces, and then you can put some axle grease in here, or any suitable automotive grease, multi-purpose grease, or whatever you have in your shop or available, and then you just put it back together like that, and just snap. This thing just snaps together. Okay, it's just a simple bearing. It's serviceable, so you don't have to buy a new one, and you don't have to throw these away. Just simply open it up, clean out the old stuff, clean out the dirt and grease, put in fresh grease, snap it back together, replace it. So now that you got the slider bearing all cleaned up, and you put fresh grease in it, and now it rotates freely, all you got to do now is for reinstallation is place the bearing on top of this lip here. Okay, and then on top of the bearing, this shape, you're going to place the strut mount. Okay, and you're now ready for reassembly. Actually, I'm going to turn that like that. Okay, so you take the strut, and you're going to just lift it up through the center like that. Now on these, note on the Protege, on this particular car, I don't know about all cars, but this one, and the top of this mount, and I'm going to show you as soon as I'm done here, there's a half moon shape or a half cutout here. that has to be aligned with before you start tightening it down. So, oh well. Hang on, let me get this. Now, since this is loose, you're going to have a lot of play here, but no big deal. As long as it's sitting where it's supposed to when you tighten it down, then you'll be fine. But let me, before I go any further, let me show you the half moon shape that I was talking about. Let's see if you can see it there. Well, I'll pick up the other one. It has a, you can see it much better on that one. You see the hole here, it's round, and then on this corner there's a like a half moon cutout or keyway shape. The shaft of the shock looks exactly like that, so that has to be lined up when you place that back together on this particular vehicle. You can see it from the back, that's how it's shaped as well. Okay, so once you've got that tightened down, again, this is normal to be loose. Make sure it's sitting, and then you just start bringing it up. Once you start getting a little bit of tension, you're gonna start to swing this around to the bottom. Actually, you can do it just like that. And just allow the spring to come up on its own. And there you have it. It looks very simple, but it's actually very dangerous. So please, if you have no experience with this, seek a qualified mechanic and don't get hurt, please. That's the last thing I want for something to happen to somebody, is to get hurt. Okay. All right. So now this is reassembled. And you can remove it. There you have it. Nice new mounts. All right, so once you want to put the strut back in the car, it's the same as showed before. Our installation is the reverse of removal. So you take the assembly unit and you just lift it up into the car like so. If you need help doing this, don't be afraid to get someone like a friend, a cousin, a brother, or a sister to help you out. If not, then you're truly a DIY guy. You can do this yourself, it's no big deal. But if you need help, get help. And that's pretty much it. And so what you're going to do, you tighten these down. Now, I'm not going to tighten these down immediately because I'm going to be doing an alignment. And particularly, you may be wondering what that white dot is. Well, that helps with the alignment. That's going to give me an indicator of where the caster angle is going to be set. Now, how do you adjust the caster in this car? A lot of people, well, I won't say a lot of people, I'll say a lot of technicians, automotive technicians at various shops. It's very difficult to get a good alignment unless you pay a lot of money, and the reason for that is because most guys who do alignments, they don't, I hate to say it, but it's usually a lot of work. And particularly on this Mazda Protege, adjusting the caster is kind of a nightmare, because you have to, you got to pull the strut out of the car, rotate the cap, and that's what that white dot is for. If it's out of specs, you got to lower it down, rotate it to the next hole, then put it back in the car, tie it down, set the car down on all fours, and then look at the settings again. You know, if you don't get that right the first time, which is going to be almost impossible, if you don't get that right, or if it's not within specs on the first time, you're going to have to keep doing that until you get it in spec. That's a lot of labor, it's a lot of time, and time is money when you're dealing with shops. So a lot of shops, a lot of times they only will adjust the angles that, you know, will be the least cost effective. Some cars have camber and toe adjustment, some of them have caster adjustment, some don't. This particular car has caster adjustment, and if I've been reading correctly on a lot of forums, a lot of people have said that Proteges have a lot of problems with caster, and if that's the case, then, you know, I'm going to show you how to adjust it. It won't be perfect. This is an older car. As you know, caster can also be affected by the car's age. As the metal ages, and, you know, if you lower the car, or if it's just an old chassis, the car is just going to tweak a little bit, you know, especially if you get into an accident. If this car has never been into an accident though, but if the car's been into a little accident where there was very slight or minimal frame damage, or even a little bit of a slight impact, you can best bet, you know, to the naked eye, you won't see it, but the chassis is tweaked just a little bit. That can affect your caster. So that's what that white dot is for, and I'm going to show a video later in this video how it's adjusted. I just told you now, you just take the you got to lower down the strut, you got to spin the strut mount, put it back in there, and then check to see if the casters are within specs, and you got to keep doing that until it comes within specs. I would say the maximum amount of turns you can make is about 4 to 5 turns, and then it would be out of spec again. So if you don't get exact numbers, basically all you have to do is just get it close as possible and leave it at that. Okay, so that's what that white dot is all about, in case you were wondering. And on the aftermarket KYB units that I purchased, which I've now taken out of the car, I'm going to show you these. They didn't have any markings on them whatsoever, period. The OEM ones did. These markings that you see here, I did, because once I was adjusting the caster before. You go plus this. If you go this way, you get positive degrees. If you go this way, you get negative degrees, and this was for the left side of the car. So no markings whatsoever. I had to put that on there. But if you look at the new ones, each side has that white mark, starting with that bolt. So if it's out, I'm probably going to have to go this way, or if it's too far in, I'll have to come back this way. We won't know until you get on the machine. All right, so this is the right side. I won't have a shot of this going on the left side, because the procedure is exactly the same, and this kind of helps me save film and time. So yeah, to do this, I got one of the camber bolts. This camber bolt is actually going to go in the top here, but before you can put it in, you got to put up the spindle. So I'm going to demonstrate how to do that. Get one of the old bolts to go on the bottom, and basically you just take the spindle. If you have to, turn the strut, align it. Like so. If you need a hand with this, don't be afraid to seek help. May need a second person to hold it up. Okay. This can be a little difficult because sometimes the mounting holes don't always want to cooperate. When things cooperate, it just goes a lot easier, but life never goes according to plan and according to how unsmoothly, rather. I was going to say something else, but okay, so you got the bottom locator bolt in, and then you just slip this guy right through the top, and this is the one that's going to adjust the camber. And you take the washer and the bolt, and they're going to face like that. Now I won't be tightening these down all the way. They won't be 100% tight. They will be tight enough to move the car from this lift to the 4-post lift so that I can do a 4-wheel alignment. I'm going to be replacing these on all 4 wheels, all 4 corners rather. And that's that. Let me bring the camera around to this side. That's done. So now you just need to see me put that back. Or really, you don't need to see me do it, but I'm gonna. If you saw me take it loose, then you'll know that installation is the reverse removal. But since we're already here, why not? Just like that. And get our 17 wrench. Actually, it would be probably easier if I just did it like this. We'll just do it. And just hold it and I'm going to do a little demonstration here. Let me give this a few zaps. Well, not all the way. Not all the way. We're not going to. That's a little too tight. It won't move that way. Okay.